My name is Andrew Yang. I'm the manager of post-secondary systems and policy here at Unite LA. We support the efforts of the LA Region K-16 Collaborative. Really looking forward to this discussion about how we can better support students through financial aid completion. And really thank you all for being here. Here's a quick roadmap for the hour. We'll begin with a quick framework of the K-16 overview to connect this financial aid work to the broader regional goals. We'll move into the main portion of the session after that, which walks through key FAFSA and CADAA updates. They'll also highlight tools and resources, and the team will also share strategies campuses are using to support students this year. We'll wrap up with time for next steps and ways Unite LA can support you as you bring this work back to your school and institution. Today's outcomes. Today, we'll hear from our colleagues about what's changing in FAFSA and CADAA, what these shifts really mean for students and for advising, and where the biggest pain points are emerging, especially for undocumented, mixed status, and first-generation families. We also want to leave you with actionable ideas you can bring back to your campus and district, things that strengthen coherence between K-12 and higher ed and make financial aid completion a smoother, more supportive process for all students. I'm sorry, connecting this back to the collaborative. As many of you know, our collaborative is focused on building stronger pathways in healthcare, computer science, and engineering. But pathways don't function without the systems that around them. Things like advising, early exposure, affordability, dual enrollment, and transfer alignment. And financial aid really sits right in the middle of those systems. If students can't get access to aid, they can't really access those other programs, no matter how strong the pathway design is. And so strengthening financial aid supports is really part of the backbone work that ties all of our K-12, community college, and university partners together. And how this really matters to the collaborative. All of those rely on financial aid strategy and student participation in FAFSA and CADAA. Financial aid completion is one of the biggest predictors of whether a student enrolls in college right after high school. Over 80% more likely in California when they complete FAFSA and CADAA. So from a K-16 perspective, financial aid isn't an extra, it's a regional systems issue. Our work, whether it's dual enrollment, transfer, work-based learning, or pathway alignment, really depends on students actually getting into college and persisting there. And that's why today we're really focused on increasing FAFSA and CADAA participation to reduce equity gaps across LA County. Today's session is all about giving partners the tools, updates, and strategies to make that possible on your individual campuses. And with that, I'd love to pass it off to our great colleagues here at Unite LA, Jenny Vu and Matthew Moore.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And I do apologize. I'm getting over a bit of a cold, so I might pause to cough, but I am feeling better. My name is Matthew Moore. I'm the Senior Manager of College Access here at Unite LA, and I'm looking forward to diving into our PowerPoint very shortly. Jenny, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny. I'm the Director of Education System Strategy here at Unite LA. And my work supports our systems change initiatives, which include K-16 Collaborative, Horizons 32K for some of you in this room who might know about it, as well as our college access initiatives.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. All right, collaboration counts, boosting financial aid reach. I know that many of you live and breathe financial aid, so some of the stuff here that we're going to share with you today is not novel, but I think it's always great to re-up your toolkit, and who doesn't like repeat messaging? All right, so a little bit about our LA Cash for College. Some of you are familiar with the LA Cash for College work. It's been around for over 2 decades. Unite LA, way back when, helped write the original legislation with then Assembly member Karen Bass. It's a California student aid led initiative. Unite LA is the regional coordinating organization here in LA County. And as the RCO, we support registered WMS or workshop management system registered financial aid workshops. And for organizations, community colleges who organize Cash for College events, when they organize these and collect student sign-ins, these students are actually entered into a scholarship opportunity drawing that Unite LA hosts typically the following spring so for this time around it'll be in April, May 2026, and we offer $1,000 scholarships. So we do encourage organizations in and around Los Angeles to register their events at Cash for College, and with enough notification, Unite LA does our best to send resources or provide a staff member that can really support with some of that on the ground facilitation support. All right, so missed opportunity. These are probably not surprising to a lot of you. In 2024, California college students missed out on nearly $500 million in federal Pell Grants. And shared from our colleagues at SoCalCan, about 20% of financial aid CADAA applications were down by 20% this past year. I think that it could be for a number of reasons. So I know that the work that you all are doing every single day is essential to boosting these financial aid completion numbers because, as we know, financial aid applications are one of the first steps and one of the greatest indicators determining if a student is going to enroll in college in the fall. And when we mean college, we mean the whole gambit. So from community college, students pursuing certificates, to a student getting, that 4-year degree, we mean it all. There's financial aid for students pursuing any and all of those degree types. And we know that when a student completes a financial aid application, they're 84% more likely to enroll in college. And the average college student, or prospective college student in California receives about $22,000 in aid. And, that includes institutional aid, state aid, federal aid, if applicable. So the application is important. Our students experience multifaceted barriers from being first generation college student. I know that we might have a lot of first gen college students here. I'm a first generation college student, the first to go to college in my family, and I feel like it's a tale as old as time. Navigating the financial aid application as a low income first generation college student is tricky, especially with the financial aid application providing this 20K view of the financial aid application, and a lot of times us who are on the ground working with students having to interpret some of the questions that they're asking, as they relate to assets, as they relate to parents' income, household size, and things like that. And we all know that if a family makes an error on an application, it could set them back, and they could potentially lose out on a lot of those gift aid dollars. So the role that you all play in helping students and families navigate the financial aid application is essential. And we thank you at Unite LA for all the work that you're doing every single day, and getting in front of students and families and letting them know that college is possible, you can go to college, and you can afford college. All right, so we're going to talk about some of the FAFSA and California DREAM Act updates. I've been in over a dozen workshops sharing these updates. So again, they're probably not going to be novel for you. We all know that a lot of them are just operational and efficiency upgrades. The invitation to contributors has been fixed. So in the application, students will just add their parent's email, and that email will send an invitation to the parent, and they'll be able to start the application there. So that is fantastic. There's real-time For students completing the FAFSA, there's real-time Social Security matching, so that's awesome. Students and families can go ahead again and start right away. For Pell Grant eligibility, there are some new income rules, and we'll share a helpful resource on the next slide that sort of gives you some bite-sized updates on some of the upcoming financial aid loan changes down to Pell Grant eligibility that you all can have and use as a resource for you and your community. And then there are some asset reporting changes, and I think that this is a positive on some of the stuff that families don't need to report. All right. Okay, going into the state and federal policy updates, these are some of the big ticket items on the One Big Beautiful Bill that have changes and does have an impact on our particular student populations, which I'll share in the next slide. Changes to federal student loan programs, impact on loan limits. There's new accountability metrics for degree offerings at four-year universities, changes to student loan repayment, and changes to federal student education grants. It's unfortunate there's been $300 billion in cuts to federal student aid programs. I feel like this is a conversation that we can have all day. And I know all of you are doing your best to communicate some of these changes in a timely manner. Many of these changes won't go into effect until July 2026. So I know that there's still time to get the accurate messaging right and help get this information down to a digestible way for families and students to really understand what they're getting into when they're funding their college pursuits. Okay. The QR code there is the link to the Cerebly one pager where you can see some of the key takeaways of the One Big Beautiful Bill. Again, feel free to capture that QR code there. And yeah, you all will also be getting a copy of these slides. So just know that you don't have to capture it right now. And our colleagues at Cerebly did identify some impacts on the new loan limits, including shifting enrollment to lower cost colleges, because, if students can't get some of those optional loans, they might have to consider going to a more affordable college, which in itself is not an issue. We also foresee students at HBCSUs having 3 times more likely to exceed Parent Plus loan limits. That's for a couple reasons. And we also see that there's going to be a high percentage of students in doctor, dental, pharmacy programs that'll exceed those aggregate loan limits. So I know a lot of students are eager to learn a bit more about those loan limits, and there's some shift to borrowing with private loans. And I think with private loans, we just know that they have high interest rates, and a lot of our students who are low income might not qualify for some of those private loans. So I do see just a lot of unknowns when it comes to funding the remainder of the cost of attendance. And I know a lot of you are troubleshooting some of those conversations right now and eagerly, learning as much as you can. Unite LA as well. And we do want to take some time now to pause and reflect on some of the changes that were outlined in the One Big Beautiful Bill and open it up to you all to sort of share, reflect, maybe even ask questions about some of the upcoming changes. And yeah, so we'll take a moment right now, take a pause, think about this question, think about some of the changes here, and how have you all been able to address them? Or what's sort of coming up for you when you're talking with students about some of these changes? And I'll go back to the question. Xiomara, thank you.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Xiomara Melendez from Cal Poly Pomona area. I think one of the questions I've heard parents begin to grapple with is with some of these changes. the population we tend to serve are looking for 100% coverage in grants. And so the question becomes of what percentage can families rely on for 4 years to be for their child to receive aid, and specifically speaking of grants. And so that is the concern. And obviously we don't have an answer because that's, family to family income, and we can't predict what is happening beyond year by year. And so that's a conversation that I find myself that questions are coming in and just trying to share with them, here's what we can project. And so we lean in, or I lean into talking about, let's look at what is the tuition fee and any required fees, because obviously there is an inflated structure when we're looking about college of like, what is, housing look like? And if our population is predominantly commuter, kind of letting them know that might not be something that you have to rely heavily on if your student is still living at home. And so leaning into what is the tuition and required fees of the university versus looking at the overall projection of cost for college per year.
Thank you, Ziomara. Yes, I also hear that as well, with students, thinking that, when they receive their financial aid package, that, a lot of the grants might cover their cost of tuition, but there's also other costs that come up, and yeah, it's a really big issue. Any other questions, reflections here? Oh, not seeing any, we're going to move on. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat for us and we can address them towards the end. All right, resources for high impacted student populations. We all, in our varying capacities, work with students who might be experiencing homelessness, foster youth, of course, and our undocumented students and mixed status families. When working with these particular populations, we just outline some best practices that we've picked up throughout the years, that we've also learned from you all in our, varying interactions and engagements. I think one thing that we still see when we are completing, Cash for College workshops is that the use of, calling financial aid simply just FAFSA. And we want to encourage everyone to, when you're talking about financial aid, call it just that, financial aid, or FAFSA and the California Dream Act application. It really goes a long way for students and families who are going to be completing the California Dream Act application to know that, hey, okay, yeah, you're including me as well. And I think it's a small change that you can, sort of see come up in some of the marketing materials that you might be sharing, when you're talking about a structured financial aid workshop that you might be having. I think it's really easy to just call it a FAFSA workshop. But again, opening it up, calling it financial aid or calling it FAFSA or CADAA is very helpful. Provide multilingual materials. I think, we have a lot of different languages that are spoken in our communities. So I think having interpretation available, also, making sure that the documents that you're sharing, any collateral that you're sharing is also in another language that's predominantly spoken by your communities. We also want to avoid assuming someone's status, especially in today's climate, and I'm talking about citizenship status. So it does come up naturally in the application, and I think that I like to preface a financial aid workshop with letting, families, students know that, hey, these applications can be a bit invasive and they do require some personal identifying information. For the adult supporters in the room, they're here to answer any questions that you might have. And then when you get to that status question, you can, when you're helping them with their application, you can ask them to, please select your current citizenship status versus assuming which application they're going to be doing. And also show them both options that they have available to them. Protect student privacy. And I think this comes up a lot, but if you do have a student who has personal circumstance that they're experiencing, it's always a good idea to try to have that one-on-one dialogue with them and their family if available, and talk about their specific scenario. At the end, Unite LA, we're going to share some office hours that we do have via Zoom where students can meet with us one-on-one and get some of their questions answered. We open up the breakout rooms, and they can meet with me, or in some cases we do have a consultant joining us who can also answer those trickier questions and scenarios. And then I'm also going to share an event that Unite LA is organizing with Cal Poly Pomona happening next month, and what we have in store for some of these trickier sort of scenarios that come up. And I think this is something I need to remind myself. And that is, I can't offer legal advice. And I know that when getting into the application, you do, confront legal related questions. So we encourage you to, again, give yourself a break, remind yourself, unless you are in the field of law, we're not permitted to give any legal advice, any tax advice. So, I do, and we do encourage you all to just connect them with the appropriate resources. I know one very popular one for citizenship for our undocumented student population is Immigrants Rising, CHIRLA. Those are all excellent resources that you all can utilize, and I know they're in various spaces, and they do a really great job at advocating for our undocumented population. So, again, offering legal advice is not a really good thing to do, especially in today's climate when I think that there's just there can be a lot of confusion. Yeah, okay. And then reinforcing safety and autonomy. I like to remind students that there are privacy laws protecting their data and anything that they put on the FAFSA. In particular, here are the 3 federal laws that protect student data, and the Higher Education Act, FERPA, and Privacy Act. I do know that I think, I personally can't say with full certainty and confidence that data won't be shared with Homeland Security, for example, but I do like to mention this in any financial aid workshop that I might be facilitating, that there are data privacy protection laws that exist, and reminding students of that. And then also reminding students that in the state of California, if they're part of a mixed status family, students can complete the California Dream Act application as well. And this data is absolutely not shared with the federal government. And this is a state-based financial aid application. And I make sure that students who are filling out the CADAA, that they do know that if they are eligible for the FAFSA, they could potentially be leaving dollars on the table, including, federal Pell Grants and some of those loans, which, federal loans do have a considerably lower interest rate compared to some private loans. So, but again, wanting to present students and families with all of their options, we always include a slide that does recommend the California Dream Act as a viable application. And students who complete the California Dream Act but are also FAFSA eligible, the following year they could, complete a FAFSA application. So, and then one other thing I also let students know, like if they have any older siblings that might have gone to college and have already received financial aid, their data is already in the system, so it won't be at any greater threat if that particular student does decide to complete their financial aid application. But again, presenting students with this option is helpful. I do like to say that it's also a student, parent, even counselor decision to help students sort of navigate that. I think for me, because I'm not school-based, Unite LA does, show up for financial aid workshops, although we don't have those strong individual student-parent relationships that counselors have with students and parents. All right. And then I like to share with students the Dreamer Service Incentive Grant. So for students who are undocumented. DSIG is the work study uh, comparable. So students who are completing the California Dream Act can apply for DSIG and receive those quote unquote work study dollars as well. Thank you, Terrence. There's legislation pending to allow any student to complete the California Dream Act. Yes, that is still pending. But for this year, students can still, if they're FAFSA eligible, they still can also complete the California Dream Act application. All right. And then reverting back to our vulnerable populations, we do also want to remind you all there is the Chafee Grant that's available for foster youth. Awards up to $4,500 a year. Yeah, and this is the number for this past academic cycle, $4,500 up to 5 years. Again, it's another helpful grant that foster youth can apply for. All right, and for our foster youth, we also, and for those of you working with foster youth, we also want you to remember that there's the Independent Living Program, ILP, and so foster youth do have access to uh, a city ILP transition coordinator who can help them navigate these college applications, financial aid, refer them to resources. They are familiar with some of the, or if not all of the foster youth resources available on a college campus. So I'm thinking of like Guardian Scholars, Next Up, some of these resources that are available to foster youth. So I know that it could be a bit confusing when a student's getting direction from a school site counselor to a ILP coordinator, and then maybe they're already in contact with the Guardian Scholar program, or maybe even a first-year experienced staff member. But just know that there's existing resources to help students sort of navigate some of these programs that are available to them. And I think it's really good to have all of these adult supporters helping them navigate these supports, because I think it could become a bit overwhelming because there are, other additional applications that students need to complete. And so, but all of the extra help is very much appreciated. So if you didn't already know, again, ILP transition coordinator is also helpful for your foster youth, and you can, ask them if they've been in contact with them. Okay, you all have probably seen some of these aggressive advertising of the CalKIDS program on Instagram. And just know that students who are a California student can receive up to $5,500. And I want to say this is for, here we go. Students in grades 1 to 12 who were in a California public high school in 2021 and 2022 can receive up to $1,500 in their pocket. Some students don't know these dollars exist. To see if they have these dollars, they'll need a couple things. I know one big one is their statewide student ID. They can go on over to the CalKIDS website and see if they're eligible. I will say on our side, we have an Angelino Corps member who's in her 3rd year at UC San Diego. And she learned about the CalKIDS program when she was in high school, and she actually found that she had $500 in there, and she was able to use those dollars towards some of upcoming housing fees. So again, these are just extra dollars that some students might have access to. We encourage you to continue to push this messaging around, hey, check to see if you have any of those CalKIDS dollars in your account. You can direct them to the CalKIDS website and learn more about eligibility yourself. You can also request CalKIDS to come and someone from CalKIDS to come and present to your school, present to your community about the program and the benefits of the program. All right. One final thing we wanted to mention that we always push, and any opportunity we get, we love to talk about the College Promise program. People should not sleep on community college. It's a viable option for students, whether they're pursuing a certificate or wanting to transfer to a four-year institution. And, most students can receive up to 2 years. I know at least for the LA College Promise, students can receive up to 2 years free, no cost tuition. So encourage your students to, consider applying for California Community College. And we have compiled a list of all the College Promise programs here in Los Angeles. And if you follow that QR code, it'll take you to a spreadsheet where you can see all of the various College Promise programs, again, here in LA. And in there, we do have a couple additional tabs on who the first year experience contact is. If they have office hours, a lot of these first year experience programs have office hours for students to take advantage of and speak with the first year experience staff member, learn more about the College Promise program. And then we also have some of the eligibility some of the added benefits of each of the College Promise programs, because no one Promise program is the same. So we scoured each website and found, the different benefits that some of them offer. And please feel free to peruse that Google Sheet. And it was updated as of last month. So a lot of the information should be current. All right. I think just one final reminder for you all. You don't need to be an expert in the financial aid application. I think just having a consistent guide for students is essential and is enough for them to go ahead and get started. And, as questions come up, I know that they can rely on you, they can rely on their counselor, they can rely on a trusted teacher on getting, their question answered. But again, we are thankful that all of you are engaged and doing this work every single day and being in front of students.
All right, thank you, Matt. So, as you read on the flyer, I'm assuming you read the flyer, but we really wanted to connect this conversation around financial aid with also the systems that support this process, right? And United LA, our goal, our mission is to really think through how we bridge and align systems that work with students, because I think that is the way that we can drive more positive outcomes for our students, is when systems that are doing the work are aligned. So for this last portion, what we want to focus on is, thinking through how we can strengthen coherence between the systems that work with students. So we have our K-12 districts and high schools. We have our higher ed institutions, and then we have a ton of college access, community-based organizations in this room, right? Who are doing this work. Go ahead, Matt, to the next slide. So I just want to kind of just start with this question. When we really think about how we can improve access and persistence for our students, I think we are all challenged, especially in such a large county as LA, to think through how we can move beyond isolated efforts. Students benefit from experiencing these systems that they transition through as one connected journey, right? But I don't think that happens. I think right now it still feels like separate, disconnected processes for students. And I think, again, this is where we want to kind of drive some conversations and strategies and solutions around how do we make these systems more connected. When we are able to think through building out coherence, what it could look like is that these systems that work with students begin thinking through how to share data more responsibly, how we can coordinate outreach, how we can share resources, how we can leverage resources, and how we perhaps can even align on advising, right? I think those kind of solutions is what's going to drive a more seamless pathway for students. So the question here, what would it look like for K-12 districts, high schools, our higher ed institutions, and our community-based organizations to operate as this, again, connected, coherent system? to drive financial aid completion, college enrollment, and student persistence. Next slide, Matt. So I want to just kind of just put out some ideas or strategies out here. And some of you in this room are like, oh, we're already doing some of this, right? Which is great. We'll have some time in a bit for you to even share out like what you're doing that works. Or maybe some of you are like, this is stuff I want to do, but there's no capacity. And we understand that capacity is really, really challenging, right? I have so many teacher and counselor friends in my circle, and I know that you guys are doing well beyond what you can do. I know college access champions and nonprofits exist to support the capacity as well. So again, just throwing out some ideas and ways that perhaps these entities can all work together. So first, when you think about intentional partnerships between high schools and their primary feeder colleges, like, I don't know, like if you're a high school like representative in this space right now in this webinar, I'm curious to even hear from you, like what do efforts look like in terms of building more strategic and intentional partnerships with your feeder colleges, right, that are around your high school. But I think this needs to happen, right? And United LA, I want to say again, as an intermediary who kind of works through system solutions, we are here to support that too. So if there are opportunities out there that you're like, oh, we need an intermediary to support, actualizing these efforts, we are here to do that. So my hope is that through these partnerships, we're thinking through, like, again, joint planning efforts. We're thinking through how we can share goals together, share logic models together, and share ownership of these student transitions, right? There is data out there that shows that right when students graduate, right, we often call it summer melt, but right when they graduate with their high school diploma, that summer melt period is the most crucial time to ensure that they are connected to another system, right? But oftentimes they don't, and that's when we lose them. And so again, I think thinking through partnerships of how do we continue to kind of iterate or think through solutions to support, especially even that transition of summer melt. Coordination of outreach and financial aid events, right? Like, I think what we see a lot, right? United LA, we're the Cash for College regional coordinating organization here in Los Angeles. And what we're seeing is a lot of high schools host these events. A lot of community colleges host these events, but rarely are they kind of merged, right? And so again, how do we think about the locality and feeder patterns and think through creating events where it's a merge of both? And so, Matt, and in the chat, Siamada already put an event that we are working with Cal Poly Pomona on. And so our hope is that those feeder high schools around Cal Poly Pomona will attend this event, right? And so again, like thinking beyond just traditional like siloed efforts. For data sharing and student tracking, this will allow for us to ensure that students are not falling through the cracks, right? We think that having early identification of students who need additional FAFSA or CADAA support will reduce like last minute scrambling, right? And then colleges can maybe close the loop by also reporting which students have completed the steps and have enrolled, so that again, we can do more intentional like warm handoffs and follow up to those students who have enrolled, and ensuring that their current high school counselor is also supporting that process, so that again, we mitigate summer melt. And then some of you guys might have heard about this, but aligned advising, right? It's really just a fancy kind of term of saying, how do we build advising so that it's aligned across all systems, so that's the student journey feels continuous and we're able to provide targeted, necessary supports throughout their transition periods. And so thinking through like, how do we even do aligned advising? We've heard of some programs where that just means that a dedicated person within each system is kind of like the advising liaison, and they're working together to ensure that, again, students are not forgotten or fallen through the cracks, right? So at a high school, you would have like a counselor, like maybe the lead counselor, be the liaison with the feeder community colleges. And in the community college, you have someone on the team who is also like the lead advisor or counselors, and they're working together to make sure that there is a smooth transition. So I know capacity is an issue, right? So again, I don't want us to be so optimistic in thinking through these solutions that we don't account for also the critical capacity challenges. But perhaps this is a conversation we can start of what could aligned advising and warm handoffs look like day to day. I think the end goal is that metrics, right? We don't want them to just stop after a student like graduates from high school or finishes completing a financial aid application. I think metrics need to follow students across that process and into the next transition, right? And then I just want to end this piece by saying that I think even when we think through advising, aligned advising, or how we can, again, like build more coherent systems, it will require, right, that each system is able to think through how we might also change roles or reconfigure roles to do this. And I know that that sometimes takes a long time within the system you're in to even have these kind of conversations around what does it really mean to be a cross-system connector, right? What does it really take for this counselor position to be reconfigured to connect with the college system, right? So I know it takes time, but again, offering up that United LA, we are here to support these conversations and these processes. And then last but not least, the last line there, you'll see braiding and funding, right? This is just one of those conversations where I think we don't talk about this enough. There's just funding everywhere, and people are being funded through different initiatives. But it's good for us to talk about how we can braid funds so that we can be creative about thinking through positions and how these added funds can support these roles that we're speaking of and how we can build up more coherent systems. So I want to throw out there too that some of you guys might know that Prop 98, there are one-time $5.1 million from the California Colleges Chancellor's Office, right? That is being offered right now. They're actually opening up a grant cycle right now for community-based organizations specifically to basically send in their proposal to support community colleges with financial aid outreach and completion. So United LA is in the process of being one of those applicants. But that is, again, money in which we're hoping we can use that to maybe be an intermediary and support high schools and colleges in thinking through financial aid outreach and completion through this one-time fund. Okay, next slide, Matt. So I'm going to just pause and give you guys some space to reflect here. There's just a few guiding questions that we're going to leave this on the screen for the next like 1 or 2 minutes. If you could just read through these questions and consider how these dynamics maybe show up in your own context and what opportunities you see for stronger cross-system coordination in the institution or system that you're currently in. So again, consider how these dynamics show up. Consider what opportunities exist for this kind of cross-system coordination and collaboration. You know, my hope is that in your own thinking, right, we will surface some like practical ways we can strengthen alignment across our systems. So here are the questions, right? Does your high school have structured partnerships with local feeder colleges to support college persistence? You might be like, yes, we do. No, we don't. Or you could say, maybe it's more like it's intermittent and it's not as formalized, but maybe it should become more formalized, right? Do your systems regularly share information or tracking records about students to support financial aid completion and college enrollment? How might dedicated advisors or liaisons within each system support aligned advising and warm handoffs that reduce summer melt and foster belonging and enrollment for first-year students? What opportunities exist to braid or align funding streams? And then given United LA's role as the Los Angeles Cash for College RCO and K-16 collaborative convener, where could our coordination or infrastructure be most helpful to you, right? So this is also a time for you guys to think through, oh, like, how can United LA support you in your efforts? So I'm gonna just leave it here for like 1 minute and let you kind of ponder through these questions. And if you want to come off mute and just share your thoughts, your feedback, or even promising practices you've seen in your system, feel free to come off mute and share. Yes, Natalie.
Hello, everybody. Natalie Sandoval, Case Manager with Collab Youth. I wanted to reflect on the part about sharing our information and tracking records. That's something that we've been currently working on improving. Our main barrier has been the lack of, I guess, return on our surveys when we're collecting data from our youth. And I know that you mentioned capacity building. So one of our solutions was to um, collect surveys, since that's easier to fill out than the one-on-one interactions, since those are also limited based off of our schedules and our youth schedules, since we are an extracurricular program for after school. But do you have any suggestions on how we can increase some of that return on the surveys, or just other methods that we could potentially utilize to collect those records?
And this is surveys to who, Natalie?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
These are surveys that you send to who?
To our current and past youth. So we just collect information on, are they applying to college? Are they applying to scholarships, FAFSA? And we also have some financial aid workshops that we have through our program as well. So it's just something that we collect to all of our youth, from all of our youth.
Yeah, I will say, and this is partly why, right, the impetus for even this conversation of like building a coherent system, right, and warm handoffs. I think that's part of the reason why it's so important, because I think oftentimes when a student moves on to something else, it's actually really hard to follow up with them to collect data and things like that, right? And so I think putting like the cart before the horse, I think building these strong kind of relationships and these connected systems will foster like more opportunities to collect better data, honestly, right? I think that is the thing that is needed and necessary. But right now, just to be frank, like we struggle with that too, Natalie, right? And to be quite honest, there's two things that I feel like we do that works. One is we do rely a lot on relationships. So if the student that we're trying to reach out to, is not responding, oftentimes we have to lean on, okay, who has the closest relationship with the student? And oftentimes it is like if a student has had a mentor, or if it's their previous like counselor, high school counselor, that's often how we try to track it down. But I'll be honest, even high school counselors are like, I don't even know how to get a hold of them, but we try that. And the other thing that we do is honestly, we offer like gift cards, right? To like reply or respond to gift surveys. That always seems to work, like a raffle. Like if you reply, we enter you into this raffle, and that has helped. But I think all this is to say, Natalie, that I really do believe that this is a larger issue, right? And I think, again, thinking through how we can build these coherent transitional systems, I think will help us generate better data too. So thank you for sharing and asking.
Thank you.
Jenny, if I may add to something you just shared, that's one of the things we're experiencing right now too, that our students, they show up more towards events where they have an incentive to come in. And these gift cards you mentioned, are a really great incentive to get our students to show up at events. But sometimes our funding sources are limited that we cannot purchase these items. And so it's a challenge, because we're trying to get them here, and we spend all this time, effort in creating these events, and we just don't know who's going to show up. And so figuring out what is the current carrot to get students and families to attend these events is really something that makes us pause and question every single event. And we reflect on it after every event too, trying to figure out, so why didn't they show up? Is it because we didn't have what incentives to it? And so you talked about gift cards here, and I think that's an area that we do see people showing up for those. We just don't know how to find that funding for them.
Right. And Siomara, here at United LA, gift cards, scholarships, we do that all through fundraising, through like philanthropy, to be quite honest, right? And the reality too is that it's exhausted because philanthropy is being asked for lots from everywhere. And so our bucket for that is small. And so to your point, it has been hard. And so I'm actually working on a separate project where some of the empathy interviews that we've been conducting, students, specifically those in alternative education settings, are saying that what they need more than anything is just access to emergency funds for whether it's food or clothes or whatever it is, But that's what's hard to fund, right? So Yamada, that's what we keep saying is that we know that students need it. We're communicating this need that actually will address persistence concerns and persistence barriers. But funders don't want to fund that because they think maybe it doesn't feel, I don't know, fancy enough. But that is also the challenge, right? And so all this to say, I think here, right, our hope is that as we have these different kind of experts in the room and people who are, youth facing, I think it'd be good for us to continue this conversation of what can we do, and yeah, iterate some joint solutions together. But I'm looking at time, so I want to make sure I get you guys all on time. So Matt, if you can go to the next slide really quick. So I do want to just end by just reminding folks again that we are here at United LA, like we have various initiatives with the goal of aligning systems and thinking through more thoughtful solutions to gaps within these systems. And so, as the LA Cash for College RCO, this year we're really trying to fundraise and kind of expand and reimagine our scope of work. So beyond just hosting or supporting Cash for College workshops, these are the four pillars of our work that we're really trying to get funding for and that we've already began some of the pre-planning work on. So we're here to really deepen regional capacity by providing training, by providing support to frontline staff, right? And so any college access champion, if there's technical assistance, coaching, training that you need, we have monthly monthly webinars, and then we have weekly office hours. We are trying to implement personalized trauma-informed care because, again, that's what we're hearing directly from students, that what actually is the most meaningful for them in getting them through the process of post-secondary education as well as persisting in it is one-to-one care. And so we are trying to build out a mentorship program with partners around LA. The strengthening K-16 ecosystem, right? This event with Cal Poly Pomona is an example. We're like, hey, we have partners within our K-16, our higher ed systems. Let's pull them into kind of this process of creating these events that are beyond just financial aid, right? The point is that we want students to also experience going to the campus, getting introduced to administrators and staff on the campus, and using that as kind of the beginning point of a warm handoff from from high school to college. And then lastly, expanding strategic financial investment. This is what Xiomara and I just addressed and talked about, is that we're really trying to fundraise and think through how do we really think through the holistic needs of students beyond just financial aid completion, but how do we support them through their holistic needs, right? So that they can get there. You guys are all familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy, right? And so I think, again, basic needs are really, really important. So we're really trying to also embed that into our work. Next slide, Matt. And then last but not least, within the LA K-16 collaborative, we are thinking through ways of, again, how do we improve collaboration and how do we jointly convene these events? How do we build on connectivity through data? And then how do we synchronize our own processes and planning? Okay, next slide. And then already talked about, right, the event. I think Matt just shared it in the flyer as well, but we have 4 more coming, you guys. We have 5 of these college bridging events with our higher ed partners scheduled from now up until February. So we will share this with you guys as they get scheduled. Next. And then I'll end with this, just sharing and discussion. We wanted more time for this, but we're running out of time, but think through these things. Are there specific strategies that you want to throw out there that you think is important to continue? If so, email us, email Andrew, right? He usually sends a follow-up email to those who join these webinars. How might we continue this conversation on building coherence? And then looking ahead, we wanted to also just hear what trends or innovations make you optimistic about the future of financial aid. So we don't have time, but would love to hear from you. If you want to share, you can put in the chat, email us later, or even just come off mute right now and share. We do have 2 minutes left. Okay, so if not, I'll turn it back to you, Andrew, for your closing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny and Matt, today for all of your insights. As a reminder to all of our partners today on this call, session materials will be shared in a follow-up email after this Zoom, and we'll also share all of the materials on our website, losangelesK16.org. As Jenny mentioned, if you're interested in continuing the conversation about this financial aid work, please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or you'd just like to continue the conversation. We'd like to thank you for our partners for joining us today and for all that you do. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.